Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, in yesterday's show, we were talking about the combat potential of non-combat oriented ships, and I kind of listed out, here are some of the things that, for this reason or that reason, chances are the performance of non-combat oriented ships, service ships basically, is probably not going to be that high, so it probably isn't a good idea to bring them into direct combat. But, there are always, there are people who feel differently. And you can't simply sit there and look at a ship and say, well, it only has this amount of guns, so this ship is automatically better. Of course not. And it's not to say that a player can't succeed doing a thing that even people say that they shouldn't. And I am not saying that. All that I am saying when I talk about these things is that here are the challenges that you may face. Here are the cards in the deck that are stacked against you. And I think that it's important to understand those things. And it's in understanding those things that you can overcome them. Now, I can illustrate this for you, but in order to do so, I have to beg your indulgence for approximately about 5-ish minutes, if you would please. And I can illustrate the fact that even though what I said is that, ships like the Reclaimer, the Caterpillar, and whatnot are going to face certain challenges, it's not to say that you can't succeed in them in a combat environment. And with your indulgence, which I presume you have given, I'm going to illustrate that for you by taking you out of this universe and bringing you into another one. But first, we need a little data to back up what I'm going to show you. Now, this right here is a chart from a website called Warcraft Logs. Now, what this does is this logs all the information that players put into it from all the raids that they do. Players can voluntarily do this. They can submit their logs, and then they can run a comparison against other players to see how they're doing. Now, the 3 yellow bars on this chart are the 3 separate specs for rogues. There's subtlety, assassination, and outlaw, which used to be combat for anybody who is familiar with rogues. Now, we're going to look at a specific boss in the Antorus raid, which is the current raid tier, and that's Kingaroth. Now, as we can see, of the 3 yellow bars, assassination is on top. So if you're playing rogue on that boss and you're playing in the 99th percentile of players, but even in these lower percentiles, it's still fairly the same. But in the 99th percentile, outlaw rogue is undoubtedly the worst, and not only the worst of the rogue specs, but it's far worse than many of the other DPS specs out there for the Kingaroth fight. So if you want to succeed, then obviously you should choose assassination as your spec, right? To succeed in that boss fight. Now, that's what the data tells us. That's what, most people kind of go, okay, well, that's what it is. Well, what if that's not actually how it is? What if we actually had an outlaw rogue to show us something different? Oh, just so happens we do. Now, we're running this fight at 2 times speed because I understand that this is not why a lot of people are here, and, this is not what a lot of people are following. But if you look at the column just to the right of the character, you can see color scheme matching that of the charts, and the yellow bars, of course, indicating our unscrupulous outlaw rogue, who is not following what they should be doing. They're not playing assassination, they're playing outlaw, and they seem to be doing quite well, even against a lot of classes which should have them completely buried in terms of damage. Not to mention, this is a very movement-heavy fight, and the rogue only being able to do damage really in melee range is now kind of not in their element. But the rogue knows the fight. The rogue knows when to save their movement cooldowns and DPS cooldowns and when to use them. And so slowly but surely, against all the odds, the rogue is now in a one-on-one fight with a hunter for top slot and DPS. Spoiler alert, the rogue is actually me. Now, what this illustrates is that despite the mathematics, despite the statistics and what people will invariably tell you, you can succeed with what you should not be able to succeed with. You can do whatever you really set your mind to within certain limits. I mean, like, if you believe that you can fly, I don't think you should jump off a balcony and try. But within certain sane limits, I think that you can achieve great things. And really, you just got to put in the work. You got to put in the effort. You have to kind of look at things and go and look out for that information and say, okay, this is what I really need to know to succeed. There's a lot of people who count on just the very basic things to kind of carry them ahead. Like in Star Citizen, there's going to be people who buy the Super Hornet just because, oh, the Super Hornet, it must be dominant, it must be good. But then there's going to be someone who's going to go out and buy a Buccaneer and totally own that Super Hornet and like it was nothing. And then there's going to be someone who's going to go out and buy a Cutlass Black and bury, that Buccaneer. There's really no limits. The only limit really is your hard work. Now, if we look at the breakdown of this fight, well, Rogue came out on top over many of the classes that should have topped the Rogue out. Well, what about the item level? So we're looking at the item level right here in the far column where the pointer is. And it turns out that actually a lot of these characters who had statistically superior classes outgeared the Rogue. So how did that happen? It happened because somebody sat down and actually did the work. Somebody sat down and ground out on a training dummy and looked up all the information and ran the simulations and said, I can succeed if I do this. Now, back to Star Citizen and how this applies. Now, certainly in the World of Warcraft, all those fights are structured. You get to know them. You learn the beats, you learn the cadence, you learn the dance. And then you just learn to get better at the dance. And once you're at a certain level, you can start to improvise and you can start to do some pretty amazing things. But in the Star Citizen universe, there is no dance. Every instance is unique. Every opponent can be different. So how do you anticipate that? How do you learn the moves? You really can't unless you're the one playing the music. Let's say, let's throw a scenario out. Let's say there's a marauding Idris in Crusader. There's some player with an Idris and he's just going around and he's trouncing ships with his Idris. He's a total badass. Then one day he just happens upon 4 or 5 reclaimers, salvaging a wreck. And they're in an area where he's known to raid and patrol. So he turns on them and he's like, oh my God, this is going to be wicked. I'm going to put this up on YouTube. I'm going to put this on my stream, blah, blah, blah. Me crushing 5 noob reclaimers. Rah, watch me. But then instead of running away, the reclaimers turn on him. And instead of using conventional weapons, they're actually using energy distortion weapons. Maybe how those systems work out, maybe those reclaimers have figured out that if we have X amount of energy distortion weapons hitting a ship like that Idris, we can actually mess up his system so bad that before he can get any one of us down, all of his systems might be shutting down. Maybe they've actually sat down, they know that this guy does this thing, and they've been waiting for him to find them. And they've gone and pre-planned out this strategy and thought, this is how we're going to do it. All of a sudden, this guy is, instead of, making a video showing himself like crushing these reclaimers, now he ends up making a video of his ship powerless and being basically torn apart by these reclaimers and destroyed by being salvaged alive, in a way. I mean, that's, we don't know. There's a lot of these systems that haven't been fleshed out. There's a lot of these things that we haven't seen, but that's something that could potentially happen. And one of the things that would make it such a good strategy is because it's entirely inconceivable. Inconceivable! You know what I mean? It would be something you would never think of. No one would ever think that, oh my God, a reclaimer's going to turn and fight an Idris and then win. you'd say, okay, well, what is the scenario where a single Idris could be defeated by a Reclaimer? And someone would go, well, you know, under these circumstances with this, and this, yeah, I suppose it's possible that a Reclaimer could defeat an Idris. The strategist would sit back and go, okay, how do I actually create that scenario now? How do I actually make this situation play out the way I need it to play out to get that outcome? Now, you may try 100 times to get that outcome, but it may never be guaranteed that you actually will get that outcome. But if you know the situation and you've planned out the situation and you've really thought about what the other guy's going to see, what the other guy's going to think, you can tilt the odds in your favor that that's the outcome that you're going to get. And it would make for a pretty sweet video if it happened. The key to really succeeding under those circumstances, whether it be a Reclaimer, a Caterpillar, a Hull C, whatever that you want to do this with, even a Crucible, the key to succeeding is to do things in a way that is completely unanticipatable. Is something that they would never see coming in a million years. It's to present your enemy with something that they think they want, that they think is just the absolute perfect scenario, that something that they think that this is exactly how this is going to play out, exactly how I want it to be. And yet you can flip that situation on them and turn it into their worst nightmare. And so when I'm talking about things like using a Reclaimer in combat, that's, you know, I made statements along those lines where I said under certain situations, if you can control the situation, you can do it. But it's not going to be easy. The deck is going to be stacked against you under those circumstances. But if you can overcome that, then it's going to make the victory, or the victory that much sweeter. And I mean, realistically, I mean, that's kind of the reason why I do that shit with my rogue. That's the reason why I play the spec that I'm not supposed to play. It's because, yeah, I can go out and I can damage and I can keep up in the fight and I can prove my worth, but it's because I'm playing a spec that I shouldn't be playing. One of the joys is hearing people either on Discord or seeing people in chat all of a sudden go, holy shit, what the fuck? I thought you were coming in here as just a charity. Like, I was just being nice to you, letting you raid with us, and oh my god, you just showed up in my raid and dunked on my best DPS with a spec that is supposed to be garbage. That's kind of why I do it, because it's unanticipatable, because it's something that it's inconceivable, and they look at it and they just go, oh my god, what the hell happened there? And that's part of the fun and kind of why I do it. And so I'm not saying that you can't fight with a Reclaimer or a Hull C or a Caterpillar or whatever. I'm just saying, if you're gonna do the dance, you might as well pick the music, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, that's the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.